I am a facial coder, which means that for the last 20 years, I have studied people's faces to understand how they are feeling about everything from advertising to product packaging to retail experiences, hiring situations, company morale, and so forth. The person who really brought us emotional intelligence was none other than Charles Darwin. Darwin was the first scientist to take emotions seriously. Darwin said to himself, if emotions didn't matter to us, they would have been weaned out of us over the course of evolution. But emotions do matter. They help us survive, and if we do well as a company, ideally being emotionally intelligent means we can evolve as a company and get better at the customer experience. Now, when you look at this list, which by the way leaves out 2 other emotions, surprise and contempt, you're going to say, oh, there are 7 core emotions and there's only 1 positive emotion, which is joy, the upscale version of happiness. And that is true, because bad news is something people hear more loudly than good news, unfortunately, because it goes back to survival. So what I want to do in my speech today is talk about how you can overcome those bad situations, how you can make them better. Yes, I would like to drive us towards happiness, but my argument is going to be that the only way to get there is to acknowledge that there are problems. If you understand the problems, solve the problems, get more literate about what's behind the problems, you have a far better chance of coming out well than just imagining that everything is a smiley face in life, because it's just not very realistic. Speaking of realistic, so I have, for instance, used facial coding on speed dating. We have 100% accuracy whether the man and the woman wants a second conversation with the other party. 100%, because we all know in a dating situation, a lot of real things don't get said, but they get shown on the face because the face is the only place in the body where the muscles attach right to the skin. It is quick, real-time, unfiltered data. So speed dating is great, but if I'm going to talk about problems, you're not yet in a relationship, and that's when both the nice things and the not so nice things may emerge. So I'm thinking of a wonderful quote from Garrison Keillor, who said, God invented marriage so we wouldn't have to fight with strangers. So there are a lot of emotions that go on in a relationship. I'm going to talk about anger, fear, and happiness. Now, there's a couple of qualities I want to introduce about emotions right away. One is that emotions are turbulent. They get our attention. They make us focus. If you do customer service well, you will have their attention because there's a problem. And the question is, can you then create a solution and transfer and maintain that attention over into the solution? If you can do that, that's golden. The other thing is that emotions are really contagious. I remember how horrified I was when I got into business and heard the term market penetration. I thought, who in the world came up with that term? My God. So I'm not so keen on that. People is what I'm interested in here. And really what I think you have here is people to people. That's what you're really talking about in business. And nothing creates more emotion than interfacing with another person. Someone once said that there are only 2 currencies in life, money and emotions. And the truth is they intersect with one another. We did some work for Aveda. This particular slide has to do with all the interactions with the staff on the floor in the retail setting. Engagement is we're literally looking at the amount of emotional activity, how involved, how interested they were during those steps of the customer experience. And on the right is, again, that positive versus negative appeal. So it's interesting. What happened on engagement is you can see the lighter numbers move to the darker color ovals because we're moving ever closer to the moment where they're going to give up their money. They're going to exchange their money for what they've picked out. On the right side, the darker it is, the more positive the experience. So they were perfectly happy interacting with the sales force on the floor, greeting them and so forth. As they moved toward spending the money, the interest went up and the positive reactions went down. They were not moving in sync. But the thing that really got our attention here is the second to last item. Pure Privilege is Aveda's loyalty program. So the loyalty program idea was that we're giving you special deals and perks and you buy this and you get that. But what actually happened was people were confused. One, the world of the details of this program. You're also holding up all the people behind you in line because it's taking a long time to explain it. And no one seems to be clear, not the clerk nor the customer involved. And then people also had fear, like, oh, are you actually scamming me? Are you trying to get me to spend more money that I actually want to spend? And is this a loyalty program, supposedly, that's masquerading as a grab my money sort of situation? So what was meant to be a positive was actually the most detrimental. And if you're talking about solving and improving the customer experience, this was an obvious place to start, in this case, for this client. So I'm a big fan of behavioral economics. Dan Ariely at Duke has endorsed one of my books, for instance. And if you look at behavioral economics, inequality aversion, that you feel you're not being dealt with fairly, is a huge driver of how people react. And people who are feeling that way will actually blow up the whole deal rather than get to a positive solution. So if there's a sense of unfairness in the interaction, that's a real red flag that has to be corrected to get to a positive outcome.